Do you wanna know what's going round? See what's the talk of the town on Real Talk on the radio today.
You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com. Broadcasting right here live in Northport, Florida. I have a very special guest in the house, and we'll hopefully find out if she is there. Jamie, are you present?
I am.
Nope, let's go to the phone.
All right.
Jamie, are you there?
I am here.
You are. So we're going to put you on speaker.
I'm going to mute this.
Yes, mute that so we don't get feedbacks. We're live on the air.
That would be
sorry
terrible.
about that, folks. We're having some technical difficulties, and I hope you can hear us out there in Radio Land and on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And we'll hopefully get some comments back to see if we are or are not out there. Because we're having just a little bit of difficulty, not bad. But how are you doing at C.A.R.E this fine July month?
We're doing good. We're trying to stay cool. But we have a lot of things going on. So especially a lot of hiring. We're doing a lot of hiring. I know you and I talked last month, and I was hoping that I would have 2 new staff here with me to introduce to you and kind of give them the platform to introduce themselves, but they are actually out at a outreach awareness event, so they will be here hopefully next month.
Well, and sometimes that happens, but the good news is you've got new staff coming in.
Correct.
They're getting trained, and in your industry, I don't know if there's a good time or a bad time for training people and bringing them on board. Having them on board is a great thing.
Correct. No, there's really not it's kind of feast or famine. It ebbs and flows a lot. Sometimes we're fully stocked for a while, and then occasionally, we have some college students, they graduate, they go off and do their thing. So then we have some openings, which was the situation that we were in now. So we know it happens, and we're okay with that. We want them to go on and do what they want to do and use their new degree and all that good stuff. So we're good with it. But we do have some exceptional new people coming on, and we're super excited about it. So,
what do we have any events coming up or anything on the calendar that people can get involved with?
So we are, in terms of us, we work kind of monthly with events, right? So in the summertime, it's a little bit difficult. We don't do a whole lot, because A, of the weather, the rain and the heat, and B, because we're not as busy, snowbirds are gone. And so there's a lot of things that factor into the time and energy we put into events during the summer. But I think our next event is going to be our bowling. So the C.A.R.E Auxiliary is our fundraising club that meets every month. And they're the ones that put on a lot of the events for us. So the golf tournament in October, they're going to do a bowling tournament in August. They do the Cooking with C.A.R.E that we just had in June. So there's a lot of different things kind of sporadically through the summer, but things will really start to heat up once we get into the fall.
And, good to have those new staff members on board when it comes to that time of year. You talk about the drop off a little bit with and I hate even to see these words anymore, because it doesn't feel like we transition from season to in season to out of season anymore. I still feel like we don't have as many people traveling back and forth. I think this year I felt it different though than we have in the past 2 or 3 years, where I feel like there's a lighter load. Do you guys feel that way too?
So my gauge is a little bit wonkier than most people's, because I have to gauge it by people here, right? Because I live in Lee County, I live in Cape Coral, and I work in Charlotte County. So I always used to kind of judge it on traffic. But the other way that we do that is we work a lot with volunteers. So we're nonprofit, so we rely heavily on our volunteers that come in. And they can do anything from answering the hotline to going into outreach events and things like that. But the majority of them are snowbirds. So 6 months out of the year,
we also lose
huge
a huge collective amount of our volunteers as well.
This year, I feel like it wasn't as much as a hit as it normally was. So I'm kind of there with you on that. I didn't feel like it was such a dramatic drop as it has been in years past.
How are our numbers? I know that when you talk about rape and prevention, are we at a point where, and I don't want to say on the downward trend, because I don't know that we're ever on a downward trend, but are we making an impact with CARE being there, being more recognized, being more of a focal point? The sheriff's office really trying to dig in and grab a hold of what you guys are doing in tandem. Are we making an impact into the community?
So it's because there's so many things that factor into that, it's kind of hard to tell, right? Yep. So we can look at our numbers based on what we get, which would be, let's say, calls coming in for hospital response. And that means that somebody has reported either domestic violence or sexual assault, and then we've dispatched an advocate to go to the hospital. So a drop in those could mean one of two things: that awareness is getting out there, people, there's not as many sexual assaults going on in Charlotte County, or someone could look at those numbers and see maybe there's less people reporting it, maybe they're not going to the hospital and contacting the police. So it's kind of a weird dynamic in order of how to tell that information. But in terms of us, we do work in tandem with Charlotte County Sheriff's Office with that. We are hoping here in the very near future to get our own standalone forensic unit, so that we don't have to rely on the hospitals. We don't have to rely on any of that. We'll have our own staff who they can go into this place. It's completely confidential through CARE and be able to get all of that done and their forensic kits submitted and all of that done without having to go through all of that situation.
And you guys have a reuse store. Mm-hmm. How is that functioning this time of year with snowbirds kind of leaving? Does that kind of pick up, or is it more ideal for people to give this time of year to reload?
Honestly, from a numbers standpoint, I couldn't really tell you. But what I can tell you is that I know that we get so a lot of when people are leaving, so the end of spring or the beginning of spring, we get a lot of calls. People are spring cleaning before they go back home. So we get a lot of donations between spring and the first of summer. And then we get a lot of donations of people when they come in, when they're getting ready to come down for the fall, maybe giving donations. Maybe they got, new pots and pans, or they got a new wardrobe or things like that. And so they're bringing those down to their new house. And so they want to donate the old things that they had in there. So I think it fluctuates pretty well in terms of the snowbirds coming and going, but it's pretty steady year round with the locals for sure.
So I'm going to ask you, we've got some listening members out there on Facebook. Can you give some feedback on the sound? We had a little bit of technical difficulty. I just want to make sure that you have the ability to hear us as we're talking. If you can give a comment back and let us know how we're doing that, I would appreciate it. If you have any comments, questions, please let us know what your questions are, and we'll address those as we go. But this is Jamie knows and I know this is a tough topic a lot of times to talk about, because directly it does affect a lot of people, but they do hide this information or kind of suppress it, so to speak. Can you talk about how the victim deals with this and kind of suppresses that from being able to have an open dialogue?
I mean, everybody handles their trauma differently, right? So depending, maybe it was past childhood sexual abuse, maybe it was, date rape, something of that, something more current. So everyone handles their trauma differently. So that's why the services that we provide are kind of sectioned for people and kind of to meet them where they are in their healing journey. So the 24/7 hotline is available to them if they want to talk to somebody. Maybe they are too embarrassed. Maybe they don't want to come in. They're not quite ready to do that face to face. That's fine. We have chat, we have text, we have the hotline. They can call and chat and text as many times as they want at any time, 24/7, to talk to somebody. The hospital response, if something does happen and they want to go to the hospital and report it and get an exam, there's an advocate 24/7 available to them as well. But on top of that, we also have support groups. Sometimes it's easier to listen to others that may be experiencing similar situations. So to come in and you don't have to talk, you can just listen. Or we have counseling available and therapy we have a licensed therapist on staff or contracted out that we will set up and refer them to for free. All of our services are free, but we try to kind of wrap around them as much as we can and try to meet them where they are in their trauma.
Well, we've had these talks with a lot of care representatives over I think we're going on 5 years.
It's been a while.
Yeah. And we've missed a couple months, and that's a staffing thing, and everybody kind of goes through that in every business within our community. With all that being said, you still are driving forward with what CARE represents, even though you're shorthanded. If people wanted to volunteer and even give some hours, are they able to do that through CARE?
Absolutely. Like I said, we rely heavily on our volunteers. So if they're interested, they can either call us or they can send an email to the admin at carefl.org. But yeah, we have lots of different opportunities for volunteers. Even if there's people that are retired or they have a craft that maybe they're good at and they want to come in and do a class with maybe the people in shelter, a cooking class. Maybe we have a retired chef that's in Punta Gorda and wants to donate his time. So anything like that we would look at as well. But they can help with so many things. We've got a couple that have a truck. So they always say if we need to move something or pick up donations, or maybe there's a client they're moving into a new house and we're going to go to the reuse store and get furniture. We need help moving it or fixing things in the shelter. Those are things that volunteers can do as well if they're not comfortable working with the clientele. But those who are, they can answer the hotline. They can do workshops with them. They can help with support groups. We rely heavily on our volunteers.
And I lost my camera here, but I'm going to be back on screen here in a second. But with the volunteers, there's a real play for volunteers in across not just Charlotte County, but Sarasota County. There's a draw for the volunteers to come in and really help out. And sometimes I think we get layered with people who volunteer in multiple arenas that are out there. Do you get that same feeling in CARE, or is it more specific?
No, it's pretty specific. They will come in and we'll kind of let them know what the options are, but they usually, some are they just want to do hotline and that is it. And they are dedicated to CARE, and this is where they're going to do their time. We have some that'll kind of help out with whatever we need, and they volunteer at different organizations across the county too. So I think it's like everybody's a little bit different.
Well, I may not be able to get my screen back. I can't believe I lost my camera. That was a first.
That's weird. I know. I saw it. It did this weird blip thing.
It did. and I'm trying to figure it out. Well, I can see myself throwing the zero up there and vibrating my voice, but when it comes right down to it, we've got all kinds of things that we've done together. We've got human trafficking events that we hold in January.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually talking about this the other day, because the human trafficking event should be something to be planned for, to attend,
Correct.
because there's so much information there. I had probably 5 or 6 people standing around, and I was telling them that I've learned so much, one, being on the radio with you guys and having these interviews, but also the last 2 years I've emceed for the human trafficking events, and the support that you get from outside sources and within the community,
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Up and down the coast, because we're number 6. Are we still 6 in the nation?
Mm-hmm.
I want to change that number so badly, but the being number 6 in the nation at that, can you talk about the human trafficking side of things, and maybe I think it's this time of year, with the waters and the beaches being more active and more people not paying attention. We're not transient right now, but I think the people who are here get to go out and do these things that they have done in crowds because of the season with travelers. And now they're out there enjoying themselves and maybe not paying attention to their surroundings like they should. Can you kind of talk about that and the reasons why human trafficking affects our area so much?
Well, we are surrounded by water, number one. So, boats coming in, it's easy to lose track of people and kind of make that the main way of transporting people back and forth, right? So that's a big reason why, but also all of the tourism. So there's a ton of tourism in Florida. The I-4 corridor is one of the worst places in human trafficking right now. And it started to seep down 75. Last I knew, there was a couple stings going on at some hotels in Sarasota. So it's starting to really kind of affect Southwest Florida and coming up from the other end. So Naples had a big sting with human trafficking that kind of bled into Lee County. So it's coming at us, as much as people don't know and as much as people don't want to believe that in our nice little sleepy seaside town. But it is. And so there are important things to look for in terms of human trafficking, and kind of just to keep an eye out. And that's why we do the human trafficking seminar, because it is a lot of pertinent information. And we get people that work directly with human trafficking survivors, and, officers, detectives, FBI, FDLE that go out and do these stings. They come and they talk about it, and they talk about their cases, and they give us information, and they kind of give us numbers and kind of things to just keep in our toolbox, so that we know that these things are happening and kind of what we can look at and see and maybe potentially pick out. So it's definitely happening. It's definitely a scary situation. And that's why we try to get as much information to the public as possible, so that they can learn about it as well. Especially, I always say, because this is a retirement community, we have a lot of grandparents down here. A lot of grandkids come down to visit grandparents. They go to the beach. We have to kind of be careful about what we're doing with the younger generation and the younger crowd coming into Florida as well from, Midwest and northern states like that. There you are.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, so I'm going to mute you for a minute. So how about turning your phone down?
It is.
I'm going to hang up from you.
Jamie, can you hear me?
Hold on, I turned you off. Let's see.
Hello?
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yay!
Yes.
We did it.
So I'm getting a little feedback. So turn your volume down. And we're still live on the air. Amazingly enough. So I'm now multitasking. I have 3 things running at the same time to capture your voice. So
That is.
It's impressive that I actually pulled it off.
I'm very impressed.
I literally don't know how I'm operating right now because I was guessing at everything, but it's nice to have everything kind of working at this point. And at least I'm on the camera. I think the camera lens makes me look like I gained 25 pounds at this point, but it's okay.
You're not alone. We all look that way on the camera.
Well, we go through these events together. We've gone through that human trafficking event. You get a lot of feedback from that. You have a lot of participation from the vendors. Are we going to look at that event as a growth each and every year?
I would love to expand it. Obviously the whole point of having an event is we want to try to get more and more and more people to go, right? So each year the attendance is a little bit higher and a little bit higher. Vendor turnout is excellent. So I would like to continue to see it grow, of course. I mean, you were there. I would love to see all of those tables filled. And have people really participate in it and get involved and go to the vendors and talk to them and all of that. I think it's a really great idea. It's a great event. It's a lot of really good information. We just need to get more people to come and attend it.
So on the strategic side of things, because I do want to help, and I want to see if the community has answers out there with this. What is our strategy for promoting just the human trafficking side of things to the community? How are we doing that now?
So one of the things, so technically, if I'm being honest, there are certain centers throughout the state of Florida that are deemed human trafficking centers, right? We are not one of them. But because we are a sexual assault center, we also assist in human trafficking. But our goal for that is if we were to come in contact with survivors of human trafficking, which we have, we will then work to find a program specific to human trafficking to then get them to. And that may be in a different state, that may be somewhere else. So in terms of that, the state of Florida, each state has national, regional, promotional situations going on with their human trafficking organizations. We are just a very small part of that. So we try to do all of the themes and titles that we have for our event is from the National Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So we all kind of work in tandem with the state and national levels of that to get that out, promote awareness, and do all of those things.
And what do we do locally? Is our database through what we've done over the years? Is it something that we send information? I'm trying to figure out how to plug and play these things because we're a nonprofit organization at the radio station. We all deal with other I hate to sound like this, but we really count on our nonprofit organizations in a lot of different facets.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, your connections are different than mine, but overwhelmingly, we lean on each other collectively.
Correct.
And it seems like that overlap. Sometimes I want to think that overlap, we're not getting information truly out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I 100% get it. So there are local organizations. There's like Restoring Oaks. I don't know. I think you know Thomas.
Yes.
Yeah. But they're a wonderful organization, and they are specific to human trafficking. So a lot of times, if we have somebody that, you know, comes through our doors, and in working with them, we determine their human trafficking, then we would definitely get Three Oaks involved. So we try to make sure that, because they are the, you know, the experts on that in terms of being able to help in that situation more, because they have more of those connections than we do. But in the same respect, if they have somebody who is, you know, a survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, that maybe also was human trafficked, then we could work with them as well with the counseling and the therapy and those type of things. So yeah, there is a lot of hand in hand kind of tandem partnerships that go on with nonprofits. But human trafficking specifically, it's one of those topics that people either just believe it's not happening in their area, right? They just don't want to believe that. And then you have the ones that know about it and know about the organizations and try to do what they can. Hence, you know, Restoring Oaks doing all they can. They've got their promotional items that they do, and then our human trafficking event. So we try to do as much as possible in getting it out to the public. But again, there's a lot tied in with other larger organizations that we partner up with for that.
Okay. And you know, when you guys go through these things, do you, and I know we've had a turnover of staff, first off, and we've lost some key people through that. Bringing new energy in, though, do you find with C.A.R.E being such a, and I don't want to say it's a grind, but it's a different job. It really is. It's not this, I'm going to go flip hamburgers. It's not work at Walmart. It's not any of those types of things. There's a mental side of things when you're, I think, dealing with this stress level, that the traumas and different things like that. The healthcare providers go through it too, when they work at different levels. When I was at the hospital and I worked on the trauma floor, your mindset is different.
Right.
And it seems like you migrate to the same mindset of people that you hang around during that type of transition of work and play. Because you're kind of, healthcare workers are in the grind, and if it's a doctor's office, it's one thing, but if it's, you know, a cardiac or a trauma floor or a psych unit or mental health or memory loss, all of those factors play a hand in the stress that people carry. Your job does that too, and the volunteers have that. And what is your, because you've been there for a long time now. How long have you been with C.A.R.E?
It's be 8 years in November, I think. Yeah.
Are you like the longest one there, the tenured one?
No, Karen's been here like a year or two longer than me, and then Alyssa, our director of domestic violence programs, has been here like going on 20 years or something. But other than that, the three of us have been here the longest, I believe. So
yeah. So how do you deal with the different stressors? Because not only as a supervisor and one who's been there for 8 years now, gone through staff, done all of these things, how are you guys managing to deal with that and keep C.A.R.E in the focal point moving forward?
It's funny because we talk about this all the time, especially when after COVID and hiring was so hard, right? We talk about this a lot, and it's definitely I think it takes a certain type of person to work in a nonprofit. That's not like that's not an environment that a lot of people either have ever been in or would be very comfortable in sometimes, right? And so that's a different kind of animal. And then you factor into that, it's a trauma-based nonprofit, right? So now you're working with, survivors that are dealing with trauma, and, you take that on as an advocate. So there's a lot of burnout. There is a lot of burnout in this field. And that's, we get that. We understand that. We practice and preach self-care as much as possible. We do a training on self-care. We make sure people take their vacation time, like it's important to really kind of reiterate that to people, that you have to take care of yourself just as much as you do, the people that you talk to. So, it's not a job that everybody could do, I guess, is the easiest way to say it, but it's also not really the job so much as being able to kind of put yourself first in terms of making sure that you're okay and that you're healthy so that you can be healthy and okay for somebody else that is going to need your services. So it's like a 50-50 with yourself.
It is, but this self-care is really something that a lot of people are gravitating to, the words of self-care, the vacation time. I need to recharge. Mm-hmm. We've changed as a society. We've changed a lot of words.
Absolutely. A mental health day,
Yes. Yeah. And we want to take the sharpness away. So we call it something else. And we the mental health side of things, to me, is finally coming back around. The words may change, but the focus of what that day really meant back in the day was I need to get away. Vacation is vacation. Mm-hmm. A sick day is a sick day. I get it. But the recharge day, a lot of times, is where your volunteer who comes in and does a few hours a day gives you guys a chance to do some other things and maybe get some things done and get it off your plate. So you're able to maybe change your mindset, rethink, re-strategize because you have help. And I think I'm bringing this back around to the volunteer side, because you can't pay for a lot of these people to come in budgetarily on the budget side, but having staff that's there and having the support from the volunteers from within the community, do you find that when you're fully employed, when you fully have volunteers who are coming in, do you find that this, and this is difficult in a trauma scenario, do you find that the stressors lessen? They're not gone, but do they lessen?
Okay. From someone who, and I laugh because if you only knew, but from someone who has been the one trying to hire and interview and train and, the turnover. Yes, the answer to that is yes. The stress level is much lower, especially on me, when we are fully staffed. But of course, right? I mean, that's going to take a toll on anybody at some point. So, with shifts aren't covered, we got to pull other staff, and then they got to work this day, and then they got to take this day. So it's just a constant juggle, right? When we are short-staffed. But yeah, so no question, if we've got, volunteers set in place and we've got a full staff, that would be amazing.
And I know we really didn't have a layout for today's show, but you're not facing this alone. There's a lot of companies out here right now that are feeling that same pressure. and I talk about that because you're not alone. Two, there has to be some recognition from the citizens of realizing that, hey, we've got a couple hours. We could help. We could change things around. I drove past a church down in Punta Gorda that I worked with Awaken, and we did some things. And it wasn't Awaken then, but they've transitioned. So I'm going to keep it right there. But, you know, we did the food pantry. We fed people at Thanksgiving. And those groups pool their volunteers to make things bigger and better, but they're pooling their volunteers. You really don't have a pool of volunteers to draw from being one unit, because you're not able to come to like Sarasota County and pool with Spark and kind of cross county lines, can you?
Right.
And so that does make for a difficult transition. And we've got borders right now. And the reason I crossed the border is our listening audience goes into Port Charlotte. And the listening audience is more South Sarasota County and North Charlotte County for WKDW 97.5. And the reach that way is vital to get this information out.
Right.
If people wanted to really just give back and help, they can. We didn't talk about what people could do. It's the bagging of leggings and different supplies that are not the stress level that we were talking about before. If 2 or 3 people wanted to come in and do that, that is a stress reliever for preparation for people who need the aftercare of a trauma. And can you, we talked about the stress. Can you talk about some of the jobs and some of the volunteer positions that people could do for CARE that there won't be inflicted into that high tense stress, but there are things that they can do that are more simplified and quicker and targeted to get things off of the staff's hands?
Absolutely. So we have weekly, daily places that we go, other nonprofits, like you said, we partner with to set up a table, hand out information. So they can do that, where they're handing out, talking about CARE services to people in the public. Maybe like we just went to Pride Fest and, you know, different festivals and things like that. We'll set up a table and hand out information. So our volunteers love to do that. Like you mentioned, putting together hospital response bags. That's always something that volunteers can do, sorting all of the donations that we have. Picking up groceries. We have to do grocery shopping for the shelter every week. So volunteers are the ones that picks up the groceries. Fixing different things. Christmas time, we have volunteers that wrap gifts for our residents. You know, just little things like that are helpful for us, so that's one less thing, you know, as we're answering the hotlines and doing those type of things. So we don't have to sort through donations and determine, you know, what could go to the shelter, what could go to the reuse store, all of that thing. So there's all types of little odds and ends stuff that that people don't think about that the volunteers could do for sure. That isn't jumping head on into the crisis side of things.
Right. And do we have in Charlotte County, is there a connection with the schools where you can sign off on volunteer hours and do different things as a nonprofit organization? I know we have that in Charlotte County or Sarasota County. Does Charlotte County have that same program within their high schools?
So no, we are. I know that that's an area that I'm not real familiar with in terms of prevention. That's our prevention side. And we're still working to get into Charlotte County. We're in a few schools in Charlotte County, but they're trying to get in just to spread awareness and talk about healthy relationships and those type of things. So that is kind of its own little animal, if you will. So in terms of having volunteers for that, that's not really something that we've really got to that point yet. What I will tell you is that we are hoping to have our child care center open up this year, and which is very exciting.
And there's a big need, huge need.
Yep. So we've had, more than one occasion where a client has to go back, a survivor has to go back to the house because they don't have anybody they don't have a support system. They don't have anybody to watch their children. And so they can't afford daycare because they can't get a job because they don't have anybody to watch their child. So it's this, vicious cycle they're on. So they end up going back. And so C.A.R.E has just came into ownership of a daycare. So we're hoping to have all the renovations and everything done by the end of the year. And we will be definitely looking for volunteers for that to come in and it'll be 0 infant to 4-year-olds. So it'll be little babies. So everybody likes to go hold little babies. But we'll be looking for volunteers to help set that up, help do things in the childcare, and then help work in the childcare as well once it's up and running.
You talk about that is such a huge thing right now. It's the shortage of childcare.
Mm-hmm.
The stressors that come. I know that there are people out there that are working 2 jobs. They're struggling with childcare. All those things add into, unfortunately, the situations that lead to the abuse side of things. That stress level you talked about, the care and the aftercare of staff. It's even in the households that are out in our community now, the people who are really truly struggling with income and overwork and the stress of making ends meet with higher priced grocery bills. I know. Right. We had a presidential debate and they talked about, and I think they gave a really bad number, by the way, because when they gave the example, they said last couple of years ago they paid $100 for groceries and now it's $120. That's not accurate.
No, not at all.
so much more than that. But I don't want to argue over the number. I do want to point out the fact that when you misrepresent the number, you actually lessen the feeling that's actually in the community, but it's not a reality. It's just lessening the number. Right. The reality is we have people out there paying double for diapers. We bought a box of coffee the other day and my wife says, well, get the cheap one. And I said, I did. It was $40 for a box of coffees. And that was at bulk. At BJ's, and I'm like, that was the cheap one. There was one for $36, but she didn't want that brand. Well, I got the cheaper of the upper end brands, but It was still $40. And people have the money to spend. Never worry about this kind of stuff. It's the people, the grinders in our world, the worker bees, the people who are serving. The people who are back in the kitchen doing dishes and doing different things, working at Walmart, and I'm not saying anything poorly about them. Everybody has a walk in life. Don't you believe that self-care starts with how we all talk to people to begin with? I mean, just at any level. I mean, not that it has a direct connection with care overall, but I think some of the things that we do to people at their job, they take home because we're adding that to us.
We try to teach that to them as well. Like you cannot, do not take this home with you. Leave the work at the door. It'll be here tomorrow. Go home and live your life, right? So, and of course, it's a lot easier said than done. But
sure.
We want to make sure that they don't take that home and they don't internalize it.
And that can be applied to other people in other jobs.
Correct.
Just not yours. And that's kind of where I was going, is that what you're teaching your staff, why aren't other organizations teaching their staff that? I mean, it does happen in the hospitals because I know but I don't think it's as focused as it is today. When I was in the hospital, it was more, hey, just go on vacation, go relax, and come back. They really didn't talk about the mental health side of things, and what you're talking about, because you do have to recharge, you do have to get away, you do have to, and I don't want to say the word forget, but you do have to let it go and then come back, because you can't carry that burden by yourself.
Well, and I think it's important to touch on too that, like you said, it's not just our job. It's not just any job. It's people's personal lives too, the grocery bills and trying to figure out how you're going to pay your child care and all of that factors in as well. So when you're, trying to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to leave work here, but then I go out the front door and now my own life smacks me in the face, right? And now you have all this. So it's super important to get away from even your own life. Take that day, do something for yourself, even if it's, 10, 15 minutes, go to the beach, sit down, drink a cup of coffee, whatever that looks like for you. But taking that time to just step away from everything, your life, your work life, all of it, and just giving yourself that time to breathe, it's super important. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's super important to kind of just get everything out of there, empty the vacuum.
And I bring that up because every time we've been on and I've had staff on, we always kind of hit these things about the relieving stress at work, at care. But it does transition to everyone that you're talking to. It transitions to everybody. It even I don't want to talk lesser about the abuser, but there's a reason a lot of times where these things get triggered. I'm not going to blame it all on the cost of eggs. It's not that simple. I wish it was. And I know that you kind of feel the same way. I wish it was that simple. We could find a quick fix.
Right.
But it is, the conversation is true that you've got to find a way to manage your stress. And
Correct.
stress management is really targeted for everyone. And I don't think even in the schools, the pressure on the kids today compared to when I was in school, they're held to a different standard, because the kids at school today, some of them are graduating with an associate's degree.
Right.
And we weren't even, listen, I was thankful to get through high school because that's my mindset when I was going to school. I can get that C. Come on, let's do it. But I can have a good time over here. I just need a C. There's kids out there that if they get a B, 1B.
If they get an A-, they freak. Yeah.
They do.
The pressure is, I can't even imagine that pressure. So yeah. Because
So
high school is hard enough as it is, right? Then you've got
Yeah.
that type of pressure put on you.
But we're talking the pressure cooker and of an adult. And now we're actually instilling that earlier and earlier and earlier. I know my granddaughter, she's 6 now, and she reads at the 4th grade level, and she's in kindergarten. That same thought process would be, let's push. Well, okay, how much further do you want to push a kindergartner?
Right.
She's reading at the 4th grade level or 3rd grade level, and she's getting it. We're doing that all the way through life now. And we're wondering why people are struggling with the mental health side of things. And we're not even teaching how to control your mental health side of things in elementary school, middle school, or high school.
Right.
And
that's a good point.
And it's
something that needs to be managed for sure. But then, when you talk about kids, you get into the parenting side of things, right? And so some parents maybe don't believe that mental health is a problem, or they don't believe that, a 7-year-old has stress. It just that's a slippery slope when it comes to all of that. So I wish I had a magical answer.
Well, I know, and you know, the funny thing is this kind of talk, this just a general conversation about it might wake somebody up that is recognizing their child or young adult or teenager who is carrying this burden, or a young adult who's already gone in and now they're in college, but you know, they're getting triggered at a different level, and maybe they're getting triggered with a lot more rage because of the stress.
Right.
Because there are progressions that happen there. And we haven't talked for months as far as being on the show and stuff, but you know, when you start breaking things down and you have these dialogues, you do tend to want to target the youth to get them to understand the process is different, because at least they're more apt to learn it than the adults that are already like neck deep into it. And I don't mean lesser of the adults. I just mean that the younger generation, they're still hopefully ready to accept maybe a different mindset. So there's still that for CARE, and that's why you work so hard to get into the schools and to educate and to change mindsets. It's if it wasn't for organizations like yours to get in, and you know, I know for a fact that you guys feel like you are victorious with one win. One win is a victory. One change of an event is like you don't feel like you're failing, but there's so many losses, and not losses. I don't want to call them losses. That's a bad word.
So many
other events that you need to change.
Yeah.
You know, there's mindsets you need to change. But when do you feel that way? I mean, I feel that way when I talk to people and I can see them flip right in front of me and they go, yeah, I could think that way. I can, and I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
That is what you're talking about, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we've managed to talk for 57 minutes about all these things, but you know, the last 5, I think we really talked about why it's important for people to support CARE, whether it's trying to get into the school systems, whether it's trying to get into the high schools, or even any of the work environments where you can go in and teach, why it's important to attend some of the meetings and events that you have out there, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. If you can't ask a question now after listening to this, I don't know what it's going to take, because there's no wall, there's no barrier.
None.
And the hotline isn't the hotline. We got like less than a minute left, but the hotline we didn't talk about, but there's no pressure in the hotline.
Yeah, no, and I touched on that briefly, but yeah, so the hotline is completely confidential. We don't know who you are that's calling. There's the chat and the text feature as well that's completely confidential. So if they don't want to talk to somebody face to face, they have 3 different means, and they can email too if they would like. But there's all different kinds of means to get to us. They just have to be willing to take that first step.
There's all kinds of ways to get to you, to get free help, free information, and a free listening ear. That even if you just called or texted or chatted and you vented to somebody who's not going to make a critical decision for you ever, they're just going to listen.
They're driving the car. We are in the passenger side. They're driving the car. If they just want to chat, if they just want to call, vent, hang up, that's fine. We are here. We're not going to tell them what to do. We'll give them resources. We will be an ear. We will give them as much support as they would like us to give them. Hands down.
This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio 97.5 FM saying thanks for listening in, and join us again on Friday for another great show. And I'm not going to tell you who the guest is. I'm just going to say, don't miss it. It's awesome. Talk to you soon. We're still live on social media real quick, but I wanted to tell people on social media, thanks for listening in. Share this information. C.A.R.E is not an organization that is going to judge you. They're going to listen. They're going to help. They're going to find you resources. And really, I actually shared it the other day. And to me, if we don't all start talking about the nonprofits in our communities, we're not really doing our civic duty. Mm-hmm. There are so many households right now that are behind the 8 ball for a lot of different resources, a lot of different reasons. If we engage with all of the nonprofits that are out there, there's resources to get help to a lot of people that may prevent the abuse side of things, whether it's to a woman, to a man, or to children. If we all work together to try to promote getting help and finding resources, I'm telling you right now, I wish we had a resource yellow pages, just resource yellow pages for nonprofit organizations.
Well, you have 211.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in the near future too, because I think that's another great side of things, because it all truly leads back to the nonprofits. But I appreciate you. I know that we had this scheduled, but I know that you had to jump on the call because you didn't have staff to do it. And I
am happy to do it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you. You know that. And I look forward to many more. And I set you up, just so you know, I set you up with meetings for the next couple months, so you have alerts in your email on those.
Perfect.
And I'm going to get the rest of the year to you probably in the next week or two, so they'll be on your calendar. But okay. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Jamie, and have a great rest of your week. Okay.
You do the same, John. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.